Take a deep breath, find your most comfortable position, and let your mind drift back nearly 2,000 years to ancient Rome. Close your eyes and prepare to step into the sandals of history's most legendary warriors. The wooden gates creak open before you, and suddenly you're blinded by the blazing Mediterranean sun. The roar hits you like a physical wall, 80,000 voices screaming, chanting, demanding blood. You grip your gladius tighter, feeling the familiar weight of the short sword that's kept you alive through 17 fights. The sand beneath your feet is already stained dark from the morning's beast hunts, and you can smell the metallic tang of blood mixed with the acrid scent of wild animal musk. This is what every gladiator experienced stepping into the Colosseum, but the journey to this moment began long before. Most gladiators weren't volunteers seeking glory, they were slaves, prisoners of war, or condemned criminals. The Romans had a genius system for turning society's unwanted into entertainment gold. Your own story began 3 years ago when Roman legions captured your village in Germania. One moment you were a free farmer, the next you were chained in a slave convoy heading toward the Eternal City. You remember your first day at the Ludus the Gladiator school that became your new home. The lanista, your trainer and owner, looked you up and down like a horse at auction. His calculating eyes measured your height, tested your reflexes, examined your build. "You'll be a retiarius," he declared, noting your lean frame and quick movements. The net fighter, one of the most skilled and dangerous gladiator types, but also one of the most vulnerable. The training was brutal beyond imagination. Every morning began before dawn with exercises that would make modern athletes weep. You learned to fight with the trident, its 3 prongs designed to catch shields and pierce armor. You practiced casting the weighted net with deadly precision, learning to ensnare opponents while staying mobile. The basics took months to master: how to dance around heavily armored opponents, how to use your speed against their strength, how to turn their weight against them. Your cell in the Ludus was cramped but not uncomfortable. Good gladiators ate well barley porridge for strength, beans for protein, dried fruit for energy, and occasional meat when you performed well. The Romans understood that starving athletes don't put on good shows. You shared quarters with men from across the empire. Germanic warriors like yourself, Celtic fighters with their wild tattoos, African hunters who knew secrets of combat you'd never imagined, and Greek athletes who brought technique from the original Olympic Games. The wooden swords felt like lead in your hands those first weeks, but gradually your body adapted to the rhythm of combat. Your muscles hardened like iron, your reflexes sharpened to razor precision, and your mind learned to calculate distance and timing in the split seconds that meant life or death. The doctors, your trainers, were former gladiators themselves, scarred veterans who'd survived the arena and now passed on their deadly knowledge with brutal efficiency. They pushed you beyond what you thought humanly possible, forcing you to fight through exhaustion, pain, and doubt, until combat became as natural as breathing. Roman audiences loved their gladiator types, each with distinct weapons and fighting styles carefully designed for maximum entertainment value. The Mamillo carried a large rectangular shield, and Gladius, wearing a fish-crested helmet that caught the sun and identified him from the stands. The Threeks fought with a small round shield and curved sword, quick and deadly like a striking snake. The heavily armored Secutor was your natural enemy, built specifically to hunt net fighters like you with methodical precision. His smooth helmet designed so your net couldn't catch on it. Then there were the more exotic fighters. The Dumicaris wielded 2 swords simultaneously in a deadly dance of steel. The Lacoriarius fought with a lasso, trying to drag opponents off their feet. The Sagittarius was an archer who provided ranged combat excitement. Each type had its role in the complex choreography of arena combat. Your fellow gladiators became your family in ways your blood relatives never could. Contrary to Hollywood portrayals, most fights weren't to the death. A skilled gladiator represented enormous investment years of training, feeding, medical care, and equipment. Killing them wasted money that could fund entire games. Instead, matches ended when one fighter was clearly beaten, signaling surrender by raising an index finger to the crowd and editor. The crowd's reaction determined your fate more than your opponent's sword. Thumbs up meant mercy, thumbs down meant death, though historians debate whether Romans actually used these gestures. What's certain is that crowd approval meant everything. A charismatic gladiator who fought with style and courage could become a celebrity, earning enough prize money to eventually buy freedom. Some gladiators became so popular that women in the audience would pay enormous sums just to meet them. You learned the politics of the arena quickly. The editor, the official running the games, wanted spectacle above all. A boring, defensive fight would anger the crowd and hurt his reputation. You had to balance survival with entertainment, staying alive while giving the people what they wanted. Sometimes that meant taking risks that tactical sense said to avoid. Medical care was surprisingly advanced for the time. The ludus had skilled doctors who understood anatomy from treating countless wounds. They could stitch cuts with techniques that wouldn't be out of place in modern hospitals, set bones with precision, and even perform primitive surgery. A gladiator's body was too valuable to lose to infection or poor healing. These medics studied gladiator injuries like modern sports medicine doctors study athletes. Training wasn't just physical, it was psychological warfare against your own limitations. You learned showmanship that would make modern actors envious, how to work the crowd with dramatic gestures, how to make movements visible from the highest seats, how to play up rivalries and storylines that kept audiences decimale, coming back for more. The Romans loved their gladiator celebrities like modern fans worship movie stars. Successful fighters had devoted fan clubs, lucrative endorsement deals with weapon makers, and even their own merchandise sold in the market surrounding the amphitheater. Some gladiators became so wealthy from prize money and sponsorships that they could afford luxury villas and slaves of their own. The night before a fight, sleep never came easily. Not from fear, fear had been beaten out of you months ago through countless training sessions and smaller arena appearances. But anticipation coursed through your veins like liquid fire. Tomorrow, you'd either rise in the rankings or join the forgotten dead buried in unmarked graves outside the city. You'd seen both outcomes countless times, had held dying friends and celebrated with victorious ones. Religious rituals helped calm pre-fight nerves and connect you to something greater than the arena's violence. Many gladiators prayed to Mars, god of war, or to their homeland deities whose names they whispered in the darkness. Some made offerings to the spirits of dead fighters, believing their ghosts lingered in the arena's shadows, watching over those who still fought. The ludus had its own shrine where you could make sacrifices of wine, bread, and incense, seeking divine favor from gods who seemed to enjoy the spectacle as much as mortal audiences. Religion provided comfort in a world where death was always one mistake, one moment of inattention, one unlucky stumble away from claiming you. As you stand in the arena now, the crowd's energy is intoxicating and terrifying. They're not here just for violence. They want a story, a narrative of courage and skill. They want to see the human drama of life and death played out in the sand. You understand that you're not just a fighter but a performer in Rome's grandest theatre, an actor in a play where the stakes are real and the audience demands authenticity. The editor gives the signal, his purple-striped toga rippling in the breeze. Your opponent, a massive secutor, steps forward. His bronze helmet gleams like a mirror, and his rectangular shield looks like a moving wall of wood and metal. But you've fought his type before in training and smaller venues. You know his blind spots, his weaknesses, the way his heavy armor slows him down in the later rounds. The trumpet sounds, and the greatest show on earth begins. This is your moment to achieve immortality or die trying. In the amphitheater's bloody sand, legends are born and heroes are made. Today, you fight not just for survival, but for the roar of the crowd and a chance at freedom that seems as distant as the stars above the arena's towering walls. The dance of death begins, and Rome holds its breath. The clash of metal on metal rings through the arena as your trident deflects the secutor's gladius. Sweat stings your eyes, but you can't afford to blink. The crowd's roar becomes a living thing, pulsing with every move you make. You sidestep his powerful thrust and cast your net in a wide arc, but he's experienced his shield catches the weighted edges before they can entangle his sword arm. This is the deadly dance you've trained for. But training never prepared you for the sheer intensity of fighting for your life while 80,000 people watch your every move. The social hierarchy of the gladiatorial world was as complex as Roman society itself. At the bottom were the Noxii, condemned criminals thrown to wild beasts with no weapons, no training, and no hope. These weren't gladiators in the true sense, they were human sacrifices designed to satisfy the crowd's bloodlust before the real entertainment began. You remember watching from the holding cells as these poor souls were driven into the arena, some weeping, others praying, all knowing they would never see another sunset. Above them were the crude fighters, slaves and prisoners given minimal training and cheap weapons. They fought in the opening acts, warming up the crowd with clumsy, desperate battles that rarely lasted long. Their deaths meant nothing to the audience, mere appetizers before the main course. But even these lowly fighters had a chance. If they showed courage and skill, they might be promoted to proper gladiator schools. You occupied the middle-tier trained gladiators who'd proven themselves worthy of investment. Your weapons were quality steel, your armor fitted by skilled craftsmen, your training overseen by expert doctors. The lanista who owned you had spent the equivalent of a small house on your development. You were his property, but valuable property that commanded respect and decent treatment. At the pinnacle stood the Primi Palace, the first spear gladiators who'd achieved legendary status. These were the superstars of the arena, men like Spartacus before his rebellion, or Flamma, who refused freedom 4 times because he loved the arena more than liberty. They lived in comfortable quarters, ate rich food, and enjoyed privileges that would make free citizens envious. Some even had their own servants and could marry, though their children would belong to their owner. Your opponent circles you now, his heavy breathing audible through his helmet's bronze faceplate. The Secutor's strength is formidable, but you've learned to read the subtle signs of fatigue. His shield drops slightly after each attack. His footwork becomes less precise as the fight drags on. You feint left, then right, keeping him guessing while conserving your energy. The crowd loves a long fight. They want to see strategy, endurance, and the gradual wearing down of one warrior by another. The economics of gladiatorial combat were staggering. A single day of games could cost a wealthy sponsor the equivalent of millions in modern currency. The animals alone, lions from Africa, bears from the northern forests, exotic creatures from the far reaches of the empire, represented fortunes in capture, transport, and feeding. Then came the gladiators themselves, each representing years of investment in training, equipment, and maintenance. Prize money for victorious gladiators could be substantial. A skilled fighter might earn enough in a single bout to live comfortably for months. The most successful could accumulate enough wealth to purchase their freedom, though many chose to continue fighting for the glory and adoration. Some gladiators became so wealthy they owned property, invested in businesses, and lived better than many free citizens. The betting that surrounded gladiatorial games was legendary. Wealthy Romans would wager enormous sums on their favorite fighters, sometimes betting entire estates on a single combat. The odds were calculated by experts who studied each gladiator's record, fighting style, and current condition. Some fights were so anticipated that betting began weeks in advance, with odds shifting based on training reports and rumors from the gladiator schools. You catch your opponent's shield with your trident's prongs and twist hard, opening his guard. Your net follows in a perfect cast, settling over his helmet and shoulders. But he's clever. Instead of panicking, he drops low and charges, using his superior weight to bowl you over. You hit the sand hard, rolling desperately to avoid his downward strike. The crowd gasps collectively, then erupts in cheers as you spring back to your feet, sand coating your sweat-slicked body. The social impact of gladiatorial games extended far beyond entertainment. They were political tools used by ambitious Romans to gain popularity and influence. Generous sponsors who provided spectacular games could win elections, secure appointments, or advance their careers. The masses might struggle to afford bread, but they never forgot a politician who gave them memorable bloodshed and excitement. Female gladiators existed, though they were rare and often viewed as novelties. These gladiatrices fought with the same weapons and training as their male counterparts, but their matches were considered exotic entertainment rather than serious competition. Some were slaves, Others were free women who chose the arena for reasons that scandalized respectable society. Emperor Domitian was particularly fond of staging fights between women and dwarfs, spectacles that even bloodthirsty Roman audiences found questionable. The gladiatorial schools were businesses first and foremost. Successful Lannister was skilled entrepreneurs who understood that their fighters needed to be celebrities as well as warriors. They hired skilled trainers, invested in quality equipment, and even employed writers to create compelling backstories for their gladiators. The best schools had their own doctors, armorers, and even managers who handled public relations and booking fights. Your breathing is becoming labored now, but so is your opponent's. The Secutor's attacks are coming slower, his movements more predictable. You've survived the early storm of his aggression, and now the fight enters the phase where experience and conditioning matter more than raw power. You circle each other like predators, each looking for the opening that will end the contest. Training regimens varied by gladiator type, but all were designed to maximize both survival and entertainment value. Rashiri, like yourself, focused on speed, agility, and precision. You practiced netcasting for hours daily, learning to anticipate how opponents would react and where they would move. Footwork drills taught you to fight effectively while constantly moving, since standing still against a heavily armored opponent meant certain death. The psychological aspects of arena combat were as important as physical skills. You learned to read crowds, understanding when they wanted blood and when they preferred mercy. A gladiator who consistently gave boring performances would find himself matched against increasingly difficult opponents until he was either killed or discarded. Conversely, a fighter who understood showmanship could extend his career and earn better treatment. Medical knowledge in the gladiatorial world was surprisingly advanced. Arena doctors understood that different wounds required different treatments, and they developed techniques for dealing with injuries that would baffle physicians in other parts of the empire. They knew how to treat cuts without leaving scars that would mark a gladiator as damaged goods, how to set bones so they would heal stronger than before, and how to manage pain so fighters could return to action quickly. The crowd's energy shifts as you and your opponent enter the final phase of combat. Both of you are exhausted, but neither has gained a decisive advantage. This is when fights are truly won or lost, not through dramatic flourishes or lucky strikes, but through the grinding determination to outlast your opponent. You can see doubt creeping into the Secutor's posture, the way his shield wavers between attacks. He's beginning to realize that his early advantage is slipping away. Your net lies trampled in the sand, torn and useless, but you still have your trident and dagger. The Secutor's shield has multiple puncture marks where your three-pronged weapon has tested his defenses. His sword arm is tiring from the weight of repeated swings, and his breathing is becoming ragged. The crowd senses that the climax is approaching, and their cheers reach a fever pitch that seems to shake the very stones of the amphitheater. This is the moment every gladiator lives for, when skill, training, and heart combine to create something greater than mere combat. In the arena's bloody sand, you're not just fighting for survival, but for the immortality that comes from giving the crowd a performance they'll remember for the rest of their lives. The moment arrives like lightning. Your opponent stumbles slightly on the uneven sand, his heavy armor throwing him off balance for just a heartbeat. That's all you need. Your trident strikes like a serpent, catching him between the plates of his armor and sending him crashing to the ground. The crowd explodes in a roar that seems to shake the very foundations of Rome itself. You stand over the fallen Secutor, chest heaving, as he raises his finger in the universal gesture of surrender. The editor looks to the crowd, reading their mood like a skilled politician. The Secutor fought bravely, gave them entertainment, and showed no cowardice. The crowd's thumbs turn upward mercy. You step back, allowing your opponent to rise and acknowledge the audience's decision. He'll live to fight another day, though his pride bears wounds that will take longer to heal than any physical injury. Victory brings its own intoxicating rush, but also the sobering realization that you've survived another day in a profession where tomorrow is never guaranteed. As you raise your trident to acknowledge the crowd's cheers, you're already calculating how many more victories you'll need to buy your freedom. The wooden sword of liberation, the rudis, seems both tantalizingly close and impossibly distant. The path to freedom varied dramatically among gladiators. Some earned their rudis through exceptional skill and crowd popularity after just a few years. Others fought for decades, accumulating scars and glory in equal measure. The most successful gladiators could negotiate their terms, demanding specific opponents, better equipment, or larger shares of prize money. They understood that their popularity gave them leverage even within the bonds of slavery. Spartacus remained the most famous example of a gladiator who chose a different path to freedom. In 73 BCE, he led a revolt that began with just 78 gladiators breaking out of their school in Capua. Within 2 years, his rebellion had grown to include over 100,000 slaves and terrorized the Roman countryside. Though ultimately defeated, Spartacus proved that gladiators were more than entertainment. They were dangerous, skilled warriors who could threaten the very foundations of Roman society. The rebellion sent shockwaves through the empire that lasted for generations. Gladiator schools increased security measures, mixing different ethnic groups to prevent unified revolts, and carefully monitoring their fighters for signs of discontent. The Romans learned that the same training that made gladiators effective entertainers also made them potential threats to the established order. Your own thoughts of freedom are more modest but no less determined. You've calculated that 12 more victories should provide enough prize money to purchase your liberty, assuming you can avoid serious injury and maintain your popularity with the crowds. Some gladiators chose to continue fighting even after earning their freedom, addicted to the glory and unable to imagine life outside the arena. Others took their rudis and disappeared into obscurity, grateful to trade fame for safety. The business of gladiatorial combat extended far beyond the arena itself. Successful fighters often became trainers, passing on their skills to new generations of warriors. Others invested their earnings in taverns, brothels, or other businesses that catered to the entertainment districts surrounding amphitheaters. The smartest gladiators understood that their fighting careers were finite and planned accordingly for life after the sand. Retirement from the arena came in various forms. The luckiest gladiators earned their freedom and enough wealth to live comfortably. Others suffered career-ending injuries that forced them into menial jobs or begging on the streets. Some died in the arena, their bodies carried out through the Porta Libitonensis, the gate of death, to be buried in unmarked graves. The mortality rate was high, but not as extreme as popular culture suggests. Good gladiators were too valuable to waste carelessly. The social stigma attached to gladiators created complex dynamics in Roman society. While crowds cheered them as heroes, respectable citizens viewed them as little better than criminals. Gladiators were forbidden from certain areas of cities, couldn't hold public office, and faced legal restrictions even after earning their freedom. Yet wealthy Roman women often pursued affairs with successful fighters, attracted by their fame and physical prowess. Your victory today moves you up the rankings, but it also makes you a target. Other gladiators will study your techniques, looking for weaknesses to exploit. The lanista will arrange more challenging matches, knowing that the crowd expects each performance to surpass the last. Success in the arena creates a cycle where victory demands ever greater risks to maintain popularity and earning potential. The equipment you wear tells the story of Roman engineering and craftsmanship. Your trident is forged from the finest steel, balanced perfectly for your height and reach. The weights on your net are precisely calculated to provide maximum thrumming distance while maintaining control. Even your minimal armor, shoulder guard, and arm protection represents hours of skilled labor by craftsmen who understood that a gladiator's life depended on their work. Different regions of the empire developed their own gladiatorial traditions and styles. North African schools produced fighters skilled in exotic weapons and techniques learned from tribal warfare. Germanic schools emphasized strength and endurance, reflecting the warrior culture of the northern tribes. Greek schools focused on technical precision and athletic prowess, drawing from their rich tradition of competitive sports. The crowd's reaction to your victory is more than mere entertainment. It's a complex social ritual that allows ordinary Romans to participate in life and death drama safely. They can experience the thrill of mortal combat, the satisfaction of judging another's fate, and the vicarious glory of victory without personal risk. For many, the arena provides emotional release from the frustrations and limitations of daily life under imperial rule. Religious beliefs surrounding gladiatorial combat were equally complex. Some Romans viewed the games as sacred rituals that honored the dead and pleased the gods. Others saw them as necessary outlets for the empire's violent impulses, better channeled into controlled entertainment than chaotic warfare. Gladiators themselves often developed deep spiritual practices, understanding that they lived constantly in the shadow of death. Your walk back to the holding area is a triumph, but also a reminder of the razor's edge you walk. Fellow gladiators congratulate you, but you can see the calculation in their eyes. In a world where today's ally might be tomorrow's opponent, genuine friendship is rare and precious. The bonds formed in the ludus are tested constantly by the demands of survival and advancement. The aftermath of victory brings its own challenges. Prize money must be managed carefully, as the temptations of wine, gambling, and women can quickly drain a gladiator's earnings. Smart fighters learn to save their winnings, investing in their future freedom rather than immediate pleasures. Others lived for the moment, knowing that tomorrow might bring death or disability. Medical treatment after fights was crucial but primitive by modern standards. Arena doctors could stitch wounds, set bones, and treat infections, but serious injuries often meant permanent disability or death. The most skilled physicians commanded high fees and worked exclusively for the wealthiest gladiator schools. A fighter's relationship with his doctor could literally mean the difference between life and death. The political implications of gladiatorial games extended throughout the empire. Successful games could make careers, while poorly received events could end political ambitions. Emperors used spectacular arena events to demonstrate their power and generosity, understanding that public approval often depended more on entertainment than effective governance. The phrase, "bread and circuses," captured this reality: keep the masses fed and entertained, and they would remain docile. As you remove your equipment in the armory, you notice new scars joining the collection that maps your career. Each mark tells a story of survival, of moments when death came close enough to touch, but couldn't quite claim you. These scars are badges of honor in the gladiatorial world, proof that you faced the ultimate test and emerged victorious. The crowd's cheers still echo in your mind as you prepare for the inevitable next fight. Victory today has bought you time, money, and respect, but it has also raised the stakes for future performances. In the arena, there is no such thing as resting on past achievements. Each fight begins with the sand wiped clean, and death waiting patiently for your first mistake. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opponents, and new opportunities to prove your worth. But tonight, you are alive, victorious, and one step closer to the freedom that burns like a flame in every gladiator's heart. The oil lamp flickers in your cell as you count the bronze coins from today's victory. Each piece represents not just money, but hope. Hope that someday you'll hold enough to buy back the freedom that was stolen from you. Around you, other gladiators tend their wounds, sharpen their weapons, or simply stare into the darkness, lost in thoughts of home, family, or the fights that await them. This is the quiet side of gladiatorial life, far from the roaring crowds and clashing steel. The history of gladiatorial combat stretches back centuries before your time, originating in Etruscan funeral rites where warriors fought to honor the dead. The Romans transformed these sacred ceremonies into public spectacles, expanding them from small memorial contests into massive entertainment complexes that could hold more people than many modern cities. What began as religious observance became the empire's most popular and defining form of entertainment. Your mind drifts to the legends whose stories are whispered in every ludus across the empire. Flamma the Syrian, who fought 34 times and won 21 victories, refused freedom 4 times because he preferred the glory of the arena to the uncertainty of civilian life. His tomb inscription reads, "He chose the sword," words that capture the strange addiction that the arena could create in its greatest champions. Then there was Carpophorus, the bestiarius who specialized in hunting wild animals. He once killed 20 beasts in a single day, including lions, leopards, and bears. His fame grew so great that poets wrote verses about his exploits, and his name became synonymous with courage in the face of savage nature. Unlike gladiators who fought other men, beast hunters faced creatures that knew no rules, showed no mercy, and fought with primal desperation. The most famous gladiator of all time remains Spartacus, whose rebellion shook the foundations of Roman society. Before his revolt, he was simply another Thracian warrior enslaved and trained to fight for Roman entertainment. But his leadership skills and military genius transformed him from arena performer into the empire's most dangerous enemy. His story proves that gladiators were far more than simple fighters. They were often accomplished warriors and natural leaders. Your own trainer often speaks of Priscus and Verus, who fought each other during Emperor Titus's inaugural games for the Colosseum. Their combat was so skillful and evenly matched that both men fought to exhaustion without either gaining advantage. The crowd was so impressed that Titus awarded both fighters their freedom simultaneously, a rare honor that demonstrated how exceptional performance could transcend the usual rules of arena combat. The beast hunts that preceded gladiatorial contests were spectacles unto themselves. Venators like the legendary Carpophorus faced not just individual animals, but entire ecosystems transported to Rome. Forests were recreated in the arena, complete with trees, bushes, and streams. Exotic animals from across the empire, elephants from Africa, bears from Germania, tigers from distant Asia, were set loose to create hunting scenarios that astounded audiences. These hunts served multiple purposes beyond entertainment. They demonstrated Roman power over nature and distant lands, showing that the empire's reach extended to the furthest corners of the known world. They also provided a way to dispose of dangerous criminals and prisoners of war while giving the crowd blood and excitement. The logistics of capturing, transporting, and maintaining these animals represented one of the most complex supply chains in the ancient world. You remember stories of gladiators who achieved such fame that they influenced fashion, politics, and culture. Successful fighters had their likenesses carved on gems, painted on walls, and molded into oil lamps. Children played with toy gladiators, imitating their fighting styles and signature moves. Women wore jewelry shaped like gladiatorial weapons, and men adopted hairstyles popularized by famous fighters. The different amphitheaters across the empire each had their own character and traditions. The Colosseum in Rome was the ultimate venue, but cities like Capua, Pompeii, and Nims had their own proud arenas where local champions could achieve regional fame. Each venue had its favorite gladiator types, preferred fighting styles, and unique spectacles that drew crowds from surrounding territories. Training methods varied not just by gladiator type, but by the philosophy of individual schools. Some doctors emphasized brute force and aggression, believing that overwhelming opponents quickly was the path to victory. Others taught patience and defensive skills, training gladiators to outlast their enemies through superior conditioning and technique. The most successful schools combined both approaches, adapting their methods to each fighter's natural abilities. Your thoughts turn to the gladiatresses, the female fighters who occasionally graced the arena with their presence. These women faced not just physical opponents but social prejudices that made their battles even more challenging. Roman society viewed women's participation in combat as either thrilling novelty or scandalous violation of natural order. Yet some female gladiators achieved considerable fame and respect, proving that courage and skill weren't limited by gender. The economics of gladiatorial schools were complex businesses that required significant investment and careful management. A successful lanista needed to balance the costs of training, feeding, housing, and equipping his fighters against the potential returns from prize money, betting, and rental fees. The most valuable gladiators were treated like prized racehorses, given the best food, medical care, and training to maximize their earning potential. Retirement planning for gladiators was a matter of life and death importance. Smart fighters began preparing for their post-arena careers from their first victory, saving money, learning new skills, and building relationships that would serve them after their fighting days ended. Some became trainers, passing on their hard-won knowledge to new generations. Others invested in businesses, using their fame to attract customers and their prize money to fund new ventures. The psychological toll of gladiatorial life was immense, though rarely discussed. Living with the constant threat of death, the pressure to perform, and the dehumanizing aspects of slavery created mental challenges that would be recognized today as severe trauma. Many gladiators developed coping mechanisms: religious devotion, superstitious rituals, or fierce loyalty to their fellow fighters that helped them maintain sanity in an insane profession. Your own journey has been shaped by countless small decisions and chance encounters. The trainer who saw potential in your quick reflexes, the doctor who saved your life after a training accident, the veteran gladiator who taught you the subtle art of reading crowds, each played a role in bringing you to this cancre moment. Success in the arena was never just about individual talent, but about the network of relationships and support that surrounded each fighter. The gladiatorial games reflected broader themes in Roman society: the tension between civilization and barbarism, the role of honor in public life, the relationship between individual achievement, collective identity. Spectators didn't just watch fights, they participated in complex social rituals that reinforced cultural values and provided outlets for emotions that had no other acceptable expression in Roman chemi. Society. Medical knowledge gained from treating gladiatorial injuries advanced Roman understanding of anatomy, surgery, and trauma care. Arena doctors developed techniques for treating wounds that wouldn't be matched until modern times. They learned to distinguish between injuries that looked severe but were actually minor and those that appeared minor but could prove fatal. This expertise made them highly sought after by wealthy Romans who could afford their services. The international nature of gladiatorial combat brought together fighting techniques from across the known world. Celtic warriors brought their aggressive charging tactics, Germanic tribes contributed their knowledge of weapon making, African fighters shared their understanding of animal behavior, and Greek athletes provided insights into training and conditioning. The arena became a melting pot where different martial traditions merged and evolved. As you prepare for sleep, you reflect on the strange brotherhood that exists among gladiators. Tomorrow, you might face any of these men in mortal combat, but tonight you share the same fears, hopes, and dreams. The arena strips away all pretense, reducing life to its most basic elements: survival, honor, and the pursuit of freedom. In this crucible of violence and spectacle, ordinary men discover what they're truly made of. The oil lamp burns lower, and the whispered conversations around you gradually fade into silence. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opponents, and new opportunities to prove your worth. But for now, you are alive, victorious, and one step closer to the freedom that burns eternal in every gladiator's heart. Dawn breaks over the ludus like a crimson sword cutting through the darkness. Today feels different, charged with an energy that makes your skin prickle and your heart race. The lanista has announced that you'll face Marcus Brutus, the legendary Mamillo who has never lost a fight in 3 years of arena combat. This isn't just another match, it's the bout that will either catapult you to the highest ranks of gladiatorial fame or end your career permanently. As you strap on your armor for what might be the last time, you can hear the crowd already gathering outside the Colosseum, their excitement building like a gathering storm. The decline of gladiatorial games didn't happen overnight, but rather stretched across centuries as the Roman Empire itself began to crumble. The rise of Christianity played a significant role, as early Christian leaders condemned the bloodshed as incompatible with their faith. Emperor Constantine, the first Christian emperor, began restricting gladiatorial contests in 325 CE, though the practice continued for decades afterward. The last recorded gladiatorial fight took place in 435 CE, marking the end of an era that had defined Roman entertainment for over 6 centuries. Economic factors also contributed to the game's decline. The massive costs of maintaining gladiator schools, importing exotic animals, and staging elaborate spectacles became increasingly difficult to justify as the empire's resources dwindled. Cities that had once competed to host the most magnificent games found themselves struggling to afford basic infrastructure. The barbarian invasions disrupted the supply chains that brought animals from Africa and fighters from distant provinces. Your final preparation ritual is more elaborate than usual. You offer wine to Mars, god of war, and whisper prayers to the spirits of fallen gladiators who might guide your blade. The superstitions that once seemed silly now feel essential: the lucky amulet around your neck, the specific way you lace your sandals, the pattern of movements you perform before entering the arena. When death hovers so close, men cling to any advantage, real or imagined. The evolution of gladiatorial combat reflected broader changes in Roman society. Early fights were simple, brutal affairs with minimal rules and basic weapons. As the empire grew more sophisticated, so did the spectacles. Complex scenarios were developed, elaborate stage sets constructed, and intricate storylines created to engage audiences. What began as funeral rites evolved into theatrical productions that combined athletic competition with dramatic entertainment. Regional variations in gladiatorial culture developed across the empire's vast territories. In North Africa, fighters specialized in combat with exotic animals and developed unique hunting techniques. Gallic regions produced gladiators known for their fearless aggression and innovative weapon modifications. Eastern provinces incorporated elements from Greek athletic traditions, emphasizing technical skill and physical conditioning. Each region contributed its own flavor to the gladiatorial tradition. The crowd's roar reaches you even in the holding area beneath the arena. 80,000 voices united in anticipation of witnessing something extraordinary. You've learned to read these sounds like a skilled musician reads sheet music. Today's audience is different, more intense, more focused. They sense that this fight will be special, that they're about to witness a defining moment in gladiatorial history. The infrastructure required to support gladiatorial games was staggering in its complexity. The Colosseum alone employed hundreds of workers, from the skilled engineers who operated the elaborate lift systems to the beast handlers who managed dangerous animals. Underneath the arena floor lay a maze of tunnels, chambers, and mechanical devices that could transform the fighting surface in moments. Trapdoors could release wild animals, scenery could appear and disappear, and even the floor itself could be flooded for naval battle recreations. Your opponent's reputation precedes him like a shadow. Marcus Brutus earned his name through a fighting style that combined crushing strength with surprising intelligence. He studies his enemies carefully, learning their habits and weaknesses before exploiting them with surgical precision. His record speaks for itself: 37 victories, 0 defeats, and a collection of scars that tell the story of battles against the empire's most skilled fighters. The social mobility that gladiatorial success could provide was unique in Roman society. Slaves could become celebrities, foreigners could achieve Roman citizenship, and condemned criminals could transform into honored warriors. This possibility of dramatic transformation captivated audiences who lived in a rigid social hierarchy where birth typically determined destiny. The arena was one of the few places where merit and courage could overcome social barriers. Training for this fight has consumed your life for months. You've studied recordings of Marcus Brutus's previous battles, analyzed his fighting patterns, and developed specific strategies to counter his strengths. Your doctors have pushed you beyond your limits, recognizing that facing an undefeated champion requires perfection in every aspect of combat. Every muscle in your body has been honed for this moment, every reflex sharpened to razor precision. The psychological warfare of gladiatorial combat extended far beyond the actual fighting. Successful gladiators cultivated personas that intimidated opponents and excited crowds. Some adopted fearsome appearances with elaborate tattoos or ritualistic scars. Others developed signature moves or fighting styles that became their trademarks. The most successful fighters understood that victory often began in their opponent's mind, where doubt and fear could be as deadly as any weapon. The betting surrounding your fight has reached legendary proportions. Wealthy Romans have wagered fortunes on the outcome, and the odds have shifted dramatically as news of your training progress spreads. Some believe your speed and agility can overcome Marcus Brutus's strength, while others argue that experience and proven ability will prevail. The financial stakes add another layer of pressure to an already intense situation. As you walk through the tunnel toward the arena, you're acutely aware that this moment represents the culmination of everything you've worked for. Years of training, dozens of victories, countless hours of pain and sacrifice have led to this confrontation. Win, and you'll join the ranks of legendary gladiators whose names echo through history. Lose, and you'll likely join the forgotten dead whose bones lie buried in unmarked graves outside the city. The technological innovations that supported gladiatorial games were remarkable for their time. The awning systems that provided shade for spectators, the sophisticated drainage systems that could clear the arena floor quickly, and the mechanical devices that created special effects all represented cutting-edge engineering. These innovations influenced architectural and engineering practices throughout the empire. Your final moments of preparation are spent in meditation, clearing your mind of everything except the immediate task ahead. The crowd's noise fades to a distant murmur as you enter the mental state that has carried you through so many previous victories. In this heightened awareness, time seems to slow, and every sensation becomes crystal clear. This is the warrior's trance that separates great gladiators from merely skilled ones. The legacy of gladiatorial combat extended far beyond the arena itself. These spectacles influenced art, literature, and philosophy throughout the Roman world. Poets read epic verses about famous fighters, sculptors immortalized their heroic poses, and philosophers debated the moral implications of finding entertainment in human suffering. The games became a lens through which Romans examined their own values and identity. The wooden gates creak open, and sunlight floods the tunnel. Beyond lies the arena where your destiny awaits. The crowd's roar washes over you like a tide, carrying with it the hopes, fears, and expectations of an entire city. Marcus Brutus stands at the opposite end of the arena, his bronze armor gleaming like a god of war. This is your moment, the culmination of a gladiator's journey from slave to legend. As you step into the sand for what may be your final fight, you carry with you the spirits of all the gladiators who came before their courage, their sacrifice, and their unbreakable determination to face death with honor. The arena holds its breath, and history waits to see what legend will be born in the blood and sand of Rome's greatest spectacle. The sand beneath your feet feels different this time, more alive, more charged with the weight of history. Marcus Brutus approaches from across the arena, his massive frame casting a shadow that seems to stretch toward you like reaching fingers. His gladius catches the morning light, sending brilliant flashes across the crowd that has packed every seat to witness this legendary confrontation. You adjust your grip on the trident, feeling the familiar weight that has served you through countless battles, and prepare for the fight that will define your legacy. The cultural impact of gladiatorial games reached far beyond the boundaries of the Roman Empire. Archaeological evidence shows that amphitheaters were built in remote provinces from Britain to North Africa, each one a testament to Rome's ability to export not just military might, but cultural values. Local populations adapted gladiatorial traditions to their own customs, creating hybrid forms of entertainment that blended Roman spectacle with indigenous practices. Your opening moves are cautious, probing, as you circle each other like predators sizing up their prey. Marcus Brutus moves with surprising grace for such a large man, his shield held high and his sword ready to strike. You can see the intelligence in his eyes. This is not a brute who relies on strength alone, but a thinking fighter who has studied your techniques as carefully as you've studied his. The crowd holds its breath, sensing that both warriors are evenly matched and that this battle could go either way. The gladiatorial schools developed sophisticated methods for matching opponents to create the most entertaining fights. Lanister kept detailed records of each fighter's strengths, weaknesses, and fighting history. They understood that the best matches weren't necessarily between the strongest fighters, but between gladiators whose styles would create compelling drama. A quick net fighter against a heavily armored opponent provided different entertainment than two sword-wielding warriors of similar build. The first exchange comes suddenly. Marcus Brutus feints left and then launches a devastating overhead strike that would have ended the fight instantly if it had connected. You roll sideways, feeling the wind from his blade, and counter with a trident thrust that catches his shield. The crowd erupts in cheers as both fighters disengage, neither having gained a clear advantage. Already you can feel the sweat beginning to bead on your forehead, despite the cool morning air. Archaeological discoveries have revealed the incredible sophistication of gladiatorial equipment. Excavations at Pompeii uncovered gladiator barracks with elaborate frescoes, training weapons made from different materials than combat gear, and even graffiti left by fighters expressing their hopes and fears. These artifacts provide intimate glimpses into the daily lives of men who lived constantly in death's shadow. Your net lies coiled at your side, waiting for the perfect moment to be deployed. Against Marcus Brutus, you'll likely get only one chance to use it effectively. His experience means he won't fall for obvious traps or predictable patterns. You've practiced the casting motion thousands of times, but in the heat of combat against a skilled opponent, even the most rehearsed techniques can fail if not executed with perfect timing. The international slave trade that supplied gladiators created a complex network that stretched across the known world. Prisoners of war from Germanic tribes, captured Celtic warriors, African hunters, and Greek athletes all found their way to Roman training schools. This diversity created a rich tapestry of fighting styles and techniques that evolved as different traditions merged and adapted to arena conditions. Marcus Brutus presses his attack, using his shield as both defense and weapon. He slams it toward your head, forcing you to duck, then follows with a horizontal sword strike that you barely manage to deflect with your trident. The crowd is on its feet now, sensing that the fight is reaching its crucial phase. Every move is calculated, every decision potentially fatal. This is gladiatorial combat at its highest level, two masters of their craft pushing each other to the absolute limits of skill and endurance. The economic networks that supported gladiatorial games were vast and complex. Ships carried exotic animals from Africa, weapons from specialized smiths, and even sand from particular regions believed to provide better footing. The grain supplies needed to feed gladiators, the medical supplies required for their care, and the materials for their equipment created an industry that employed thousands of people across the empire. Your breathing is becoming labored, but you notice that Marcus Brutus is also showing signs of fatigue. His attacks, while still powerful, are coming slightly slower. His shield work, though still effective, lacks the crisp precision of his opening moves. This is your opportunity. If you can maintain your speed and capitalize on his gradual decline, you might find the opening you need to end this fight. The role of gladiatorial games in Roman politics cannot be overstated. Ambitious politicians used spectacular games to curry favor with the masses, understanding that public approval often mattered more than legislative achievement. The most successful political careers were built on the foundation of memorable entertainment, and the phrase "bread and circuses" captured the essential bargain between rulers and the ruled. Your trident finds its mark, catching Marcus Brutus's shield and forcing it wide. For a split second, his torso is exposed, and you strike with your dagger. The blade finds a gap in his armor, drawing first blood. The crowd roars its approval, but you know better than to celebrate prematurely. A wounded gladiator is often the most dangerous, and Marcus Brutus's reputation wasn't built on surrendering when injured. The medical knowledge gained from gladiatorial combat advanced Roman understanding of human anatomy in ways that wouldn't be matched for centuries. Arena physicians learned to distinguish between spectacular-looking wounds that were actually minor and seemingly small injuries that could prove fatal. They developed surgical techniques, understood the importance of clean wounds, and even performed primitive operations to save valuable fighters. The counterattack comes with vicious intensity. Marcus Brutus, stung by the wound and angered by the crowd's reaction, unleashes a flurry of strikes that test every defensive skill you've learned. His gladius becomes a blur of steel as he presses forward, using his size and reach to maximum advantage. You give ground, using your mobility to stay just out of range of his most devastating attacks while looking for another opening. The transformation of gladiatorial combat from funeral rites to mass entertainment reflects broader changes in Roman society. What began as solemn religious observances evolved into carefully choreographed spectacles designed to maximize audience engagement. The Romans' genius lay in understanding that people craved not just violence, but meaningful violence that told stories and created emotional connections. Your net finally finds its target, settling over Marcus Brutus's head and shoulders just as he commits to a powerful thrust. He's entangled, but only momentarily. His strength and experience allow him to begin cutting free almost immediately. This is your moment, perhaps your only chance. You drive forward with your trident, aiming for the gap in his armor that you created with your earlier strike. The crowd's roar reaches a crescendo as your trident finds its mark. Marcus Brutus staggers, his sword arm dropping as pain and shock register on his face. He looks at you with something approaching respect, then raises his finger in the gesture of surrender. The undefeated champion has finally met his match, and you have achieved the impossible victory over the arena's most legendary fighter. The editor's decision is swift. The crowd's thumbs point upward, granting mercy to the fallen champion. Marcus Brutus removes his helmet and nods to you, a gesture of respect from one warrior to another. You help him to his feet, and together you acknowledge the crowd's thunderous approval. In this moment, you realize that you've not just won a fight, you've become part of gladiatorial legend. The wooden rudis, the sword of freedom, is presented to you by the editor himself. After years of slavery, countless battles, and unimaginable hardships, you finally hold the symbol of your liberation. The crowd's cheers wash over you like a tide, carrying with them the knowledge that you've achieved something remarkable. You are no longer just a gladiator, you are a free man, a legend, and a survivor of Rome's greatest spectacle. As you raise the rudis above your head, you think of all the fighters who never lived to see this moment. Their spirits seem to fill the arena, celebrating your victory and the freedom it represents. The gladiatorial games may be ending, but the courage, skill, and determination they represented will echo through history. You have written your name in the annals of Rome's greatest warriors, and that legacy will endure long after the last arena falls silent. The gladiatorial games that once defined Roman entertainment didn't disappear overnight. They slowly faded as the empire itself began to crumble. By the 5th century CE, the last recorded gladiatorial contests were held, marking the end of an institution that had captivated audiences for over 700 years. The reasons for their decline were as complex as the games themselves had been. Christianity's rise played a major role in ending the games. Early Christian leaders like Saint Augustine condemned the violence as incompatible with Christian values, arguing that watching humans kill each other for entertainment corrupted the soul. Emperor Constantine, the first Christian emperor, began restricting gladiatorial contests in 325 CE, though he didn't ban them outright. The cultural shift was gradual but irreversible. A society that once celebrated martial prowess in the arena was learning to value different ideals. Economic factors proved even more decisive than moral objections. The massive costs of maintaining amphitheaters, training gladiators, and importing exotic animals became unsustainable as the empire's wealth declined. Provincial governors could no longer afford the spectacular games that had once secured their political futures. The infrastructure itself began to decay. Many amphitheaters were abandoned, converted to other uses, or simply fell into ruin. The legacy of gladiatorial combat extends far beyond ancient Rome. Modern sports borrowed heavily from gladiatorial traditions. The emphasis on individual champions, the importance of crowd engagement, and even the concept of professional athletic entertainment. Boxing, wrestling, and mixed martial arts all trace their roots back to the principles that made gladiatorial contests so compelling to ancient audiences. Archaeological discoveries continue to reveal new insights about gladiatorial life. Excavations at Pompeii uncovered gladiator barracks complete with training equipment, medical facilities, and even graffiti left by fighters. These findings paint a picture of professional athletes who took pride in their skills, formed close bonds with their fellow fighters, and lived lives that were simultaneously brutal and surprisingly sophisticated. The gladiatorial schools themselves evolved into something resembling modern sports academies. The best facilities provided medical care that surpassed what was available to ordinary citizens, nutritious diets designed to build optimal fighting physiques, and training programs that would impress modern athletic summer. Coaches. Some gladiators became wealthy enough to purchase their own schools after earning their freedom, creating a cycle where former fighters became the next generation's trainers. Perhaps most remarkably, gladiatorial combat influenced Roman law and social structures in ways that lasted long after the games ended. The legal principles governing gladiatorial contracts, the rights of slaves in specialized professions, and even concepts of public entertainment as a civic duty all emerged from the gladiatorial system. These innovations shaped Roman society and, through Roman influence, affected the development of Western civilization. The gladiatorial oath, "I will endure to be burned, to be bound, to be beaten, and to be killed by the sword," represented more than just a legal contract. It embodied a philosophy of absolute commitment that resonated throughout Roman culture. This mindset influenced everything from military discipline to political leadership, creating a society that valued courage, honor, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for glory. Modern entertainment still draws inspiration from gladiatorial traditions. Professional wrestling, with its emphasis on character development and crowd interaction, mirrors the theatrical aspects of arena combat. Video games, movies, and television shows regularly reference gladiatorial themes because they tap into something fundamental about human nature: our fascination with individual courage in the face of overwhelming odds. The transformation of captured enemies into celebrated entertainers reveals something profound about Roman society's ability to absorb and repurpose foreign influences. Gladiators from Germania, Gaul, Thrace, and Africa didn't just fight in Roman arenas, they became part of Roman culture, their fighting styles and techniques enriching the empire's martial traditions. This cultural synthesis was one of Rome's greatest strengths and helps explain how a city-state grew into a civilization that dominated the ancient world. The medical knowledge gained from treating gladiatorial injuries advanced Roman understanding of human anatomy and surgical techniques. Arena physicians learned to distinguish between spectacular-looking wounds that were actually minor and seemingly small injuries that could prove fatal. They developed treatments for specific combat injuries, understood the importance of preventing infection, and even performed primitive operations that wouldn't be matched for centuries. Today, when we watch athletes compete in massive stadiums filled with cheering crowds, we're witnessing the direct descendants of gladiatorial entertainment. The roar of 80,000 fans in a modern arena echoes the voices that once filled the Colosseum, and the athletes who capture our imagination are following in the footsteps of fighters who earned their freedom with skill, courage, and determination. The physical amphitheaters themselves tell stories that continue to captivate us today. The Colosseum in Rome, with its complex underground tunnels and mechanical systems, demonstrates engineering prowess that rivals modern stadium construction. The Hypogeum, the underground area beneath the arena floor, contained elevators, trapdoors, and animal cages that could dramatically transform the fighting environment mid-battle. These innovations weren't just functional, they were theatrical magic that enhanced the spectacle. Regional variations in gladiatorial traditions reveal how the games adapted to local cultures across the empire. In North Africa, gladiators fought alongside exotic animals like lions and leopards that were native to the region. British amphitheaters featured fighters skilled in Celtic warrior traditions, while Germanic provinces showcased combat styles that reflected Northern European martial heritage. This cultural fusion created a rich tapestry of fighting techniques that made each regional arena unique. The social mobility that gladiatorial combat provided was unprecedented in the ancient world. Successful fighters could accumulate wealth, gain fame that transcended social class, and even influence political decisions through their popularity with the masses. Some gladiators became so wealthy that they owned property, invested in businesses, and lived better than many free citizens. This possibility of advancement, however slim, gave hope to people who had lost everything. The training regimens developed for gladiators influenced military preparation throughout the empire. Roman legions adopted gladiatorial training techniques, understanding that the psychological conditioning and physical preparation that created arena champions could also forge superior soldiers. The emphasis on individual combat skills, weapon mastery, and mental toughness became integral to Roman military doctrine. Women gladiators, known as gladiatrices, challenge our assumptions about gender roles in ancient Rome. Although less common than their male counterparts, these female fighters were skilled warriors who drew enormous crowds. Their existence reveals that Roman society was more complex than often portrayed, with opportunities for women to achieve fame and recognition through martial prowess, even within the constraints of a patriarchal culture. The gladiatorial games may have ended over 500 years ago, but their influence on human culture continues to this day. They remind us that the desire to test ourselves against worthy opponents, to push beyond our limits, and to achieve greatness in the face of mortal danger is as old as civilization itself. In every boxing match, every wrestling contest, and every moment when an athlete rises to meet an impossible challenge, the spirit of the gladiators lives on. The arena floor, soaked with centuries of blood and sweat, may be silent now, but the echoes of those ancient battles continue to resonate through our modern world. The gladiators who once fought for their lives, their freedom, and their honor gave us more than entertainment. They gave us a template for human courage that transcends time itself.